Hello everyone and welcome back to the SteemTrail Gaming News. Today is the 10th July of 2018. My name is Kralizec and I will be your host for the evening. Today we're going to be looking at one single story, but it is a big one and it will require a lot of thought. Let's talk about possible social media guideline for game developers. So this is essentially all about a blog published by the International Game Developers Association, which, if you don't know, is a little association of game developers. It's pretty much self-explanatory, really. And it has been written in response to what happened with Jessica Price last week. And if you don't know what happened with Jessica Price, she was fired from ArenaNet because of the way she tweeted back to a response from a content creator who already was responding to her quote-unquote Twitter blog article, because I really don't know what's a better way to describe it, about building narrative in video games. So let's actually take a look at the executive director blog and see what exactly is this all about. So this was written by Jen McLean just 22 hours ago, and it's titled Game Devs on Social Media, Questions You Should Ask for Your Protection. And again, it tells us what the story was. 2 ArenaNet employees were recently fired, blah blah blah. And it ends up, however, without clear information from an employer on social media use, interacting with people as a game developer can jeopardize someone's job and career and even their personal safety. And you know what? That is actually a good point. And I'm somewhat surprised that it hasn't occurred to anybody before, including me, that there needs to be guidelines for how your employees behave on social media if they choose to display that they do work for your company. And I'm pretty sure that there are many companies that do already have such guidelines, but this blog is a good summary of what all needs to be taken into question. And some of you may not remember this, but I am a community manager for a newly developed game. So the fact that this completely went over my head is totally on me, and I'm very glad that this was posted and that I can actually create some sort of a code of conduct. So let's take a look at what they're actually talking about. What are the rules for staff about engaging in company-controlled online spaces? I think this part is probably the easiest to answer, especially since it's talking about company-controlled online spaces. But let's first read the text here. Is direct engagement with consumers a job requirement for non-community customer support employees? If so, what training is provided to employees to help facilitate these interactions? So first off, I think here the pretty clear answer is no. It's probably not a job requirement for the vast majority of employees, especially for the developers. There will probably be people like myself in a position of a community manager or even moderators on a forum who will just have to directly talk with the community, but the rest of them, I don't think they are required in any form. And in the instances they are, let's say in a developer Q&A, they should probably, yes, get some training and be told what exactly they can talk about and what exactly they cannot talk about. That's a good point to raise. If non-consumer support staff is engaging directly in company spaces, are they allowed to disagree with consumers? If so, how much disagreement is acceptable? What sort of language, with examples, is acceptable and what isn't? So, are they allowed to disagree with consumers? Yes, obviously. Opinions are opinions are opinions, but the other part is actually more good. What sort of language is acceptable and what isn't? And yes, writing a list of examples of what is not acceptable is probably a good idea. I would say insults, attacking language, any sort of harassment should be just straight off and not acceptable under any circumstance. If a consumer is behaving toward a non-consumer staff in a way that a staff member feels is inappropriate, condescending, exhausting, is the staff member allowed to disengage? More importantly, is the staff member allowed to tell them they are disengaging? Are they allowed to say why they are disengaging? Is there an escalation process if the staff member should follow internally? Oh, that the staff member should follow internally. So this, I think, needs to be separated into two parts. So first, it's this. These are three very different things. Inappropriate, yes, that's bad. Condescending, there are jerks always on the internet that will be condescending to you. I don't think that's something you should be taking personally. And lastly, exhausting. Seriously, it's your job probably. If you're interacting with these people as part of your job, then you're essentially not allowed to be exhausted. And if you're not a part of a team that's meant to communicate with people, exhausting, then you should probably just stop communicating. And that sort of answers this part. Is the staff member allowed to disengage? Yeah, obviously. But tell them they're disengaging, depends how. Again, it really depends how. It's not a question of yes or no. It's a question of, okay, I can see that, let's say you're arguing with like 20 different forum posts and you say, you know what, I can see this isn't really going anywhere. I will not be responding to you anymore. And that's completely fine. But if they come in and say, you know what, fuck you, I don't get you, you don't get me, and screw you and go to hell, that's obviously bad. This is pretty much the same thing for this. Again, it depends how they tell them why they are disengaging. They tell them, I feel like we just both have different views and our views are just incompatible. Yeah, obviously. But again, if they're like, you're just a little kid that doesn't understand shit about game development, that's obviously, again, bad. And an escalation process that the staff member should follow internally. I don't think you can actually create something like this. The amount of different interactions you can have with people is just way too large. And apart from saying if somebody insults you, you can block them or something like that, I do not really see a way how to do this well. Okay, second part is, what are the rules for employees' personal social media accounts? And this is where we get into the really hard part. This is all stuff that is so hard to talk about. So first off, are staff allowed to have personal social media accounts on which they identify themselves as an employee of the company or on which they share their role at the company? Is LinkedIn included in this? So I would start actually from the end. Let's start with LinkedIn. I don't think there's really an option to say LinkedIn is not allowed to be here, just because it is a professional and social media site, and it's all about making networking and these things. So you cannot really say you cannot show where you work there. But when it comes to more traditional forms of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, linking your identity to your work, I think they should be allowed to say where they work. on the other hand, unless it's specifically their job to speak for the company, they probably should not be talking about anything that could be even slightly considered speaking for the company. Speaking about anything that's about internal development, about the mechanics for an upcoming game, because all of that can very easily be construed as talking for the company. And then it comes to, if so, are staff allowed to have personal social media accounts that aren't locked to the public? Are they allowed to have personal social media accounts that are locked to the public? To be honest, I'm not completely sure what they mean by this. Does that mean that it's just like, can they have personal social media accounts? Because that's the thing I'm getting from this. And thus, since I'm not completely sure what does this mean, I will not really address it. Is it expected that staff include any disclaimers that they do not represent a company or that their opinions are their own? Where should that disclaimer be included? You know what? I think this is a good idea, actually. It will prevent so many misunderstandings, and it should be put probably into the bio, right where the profession is listed. And if you cannot put it there, it should be put it either into the bio or in the tweets that could be potentially misconstrued as people speaking for the company. Next up, we have, are staff allowed to discuss non-confidential aspects of their jobs on their personal social media accounts? Depends on what exactly you mean by non-confidential. Yes, they can obviously say, oh, I had a bad day at work today. I was so tired, nothing went well for me. My code didn't compile because I don't know why. It had so many bugs in it. Sure, they can do that. On the other hand, I do not think they should be talking about the internal affairs of the company. Like, I know, so my boss today, he came in a new car. He's so rich and I hate him. I don't think that should be really allowed. And then there's the last part, which I do think this is mostly talking about, is if something bad happens at work, are they allowed to talk about it on social media? And I would again say that it depends. And I know everybody hates this. It's nuance, but nuance is sometimes important. So again, it depends on what exactly are we talking about. About, let's say, oh, today I've been sexually harassed. Yes, I think they should be allowed to talk about that. On the other hand, if they talk about it, they should also make a legal claim about it. Not just be like online spewing stuff without actually putting it through the justice system. I truly believe that. And also, if they do put it through the justice system, there should be 100% protection of them. But on the other hand, if they just spew out accusations without actually seeking justice, essentially trying to get mob justice happen, then I think they should probably be put on some sort of reprimand. Just because they're not really trying to get real world law justice, they're just trying to get an online mob to attack somebody because they don't want to bother going through the due process. And if so, what sort of aspects of their jobs are they allowed to discuss? Again, I would say it's how exactly did their day job go that day? What feelings are they allowed to express? This, I'm completely unsure what exactly this one means, so I will skip it. What sort of language with examples are they or aren't they allowed to use with examples? That's very clear. Anything that could be considered foul mouth stuff is completely forbidden if trying to say that, oh look, I work here. You remember, if you're trying to say I work somewhere, then you should also try to behave yourself. Are they allowed to disagree with consumers? Obviously they are. There's no doubt about that one. Are staff expected or required to engage with consumers on their personal social media accounts? If so, how often, during what periods of the day, and to what degree? No, they aren't. They may, but they aren't. That's very clear to me. Are staff allowed to tell consumers approaching them via their personal social media accounts that they won't engage? If the consumer won't leave them alone, what sort of language are they allowed to use, or what actions are they allowed to take to be left alone? Is there an escalation process the staff member should follow internally? You know what? Obviously they don't have to engage with people, and they can tell them they won't engage with them. I don't think there should be some sort of a process involved, though I personally would prefer if they would just tell them, you know what, I don't want to talk with you. And try to do it in an as polite way as they are capable of. And if the person keeps bothering them, block them. It's fairly simple. But again, they are not allowed to attack the consumers. That's my opinion here. Okay, now we're getting into something that's actually slightly less controversial and easier to decide. What will the company do to protect its talent from internet harassment mobs? That's a good question. What should the company do? What steps will the company take to deal with customer hostility towards non-customer staff in company spaces such as message boards or company-controlled Reddit AMAs? Blocking and banning. Fairly obvious. Maybe like first you get a warning, like a temporary ban, you know, like 24 hours. Second one is like a week-long one. Third is just permaban. It's fairly obvious here. If a targeted harassment campaign is directed at a staff member or members, what steps will the company take to protect them? Maybe, so I really don't know what the company can really do in that case. They could contact the social medias they are being attacked on. They should obviously try to protect them from being doxxed, and just maybe allow them to like visit a psychologist or a therapist to deal with this. It really depends on the severity of this happening and on how exactly is this person able to deal with it. It really depends on the individual circumstance. But yes, the company should provide some sort of help, either just through allowing them to say, you know what, I do not want to engage from a point of view as a company representative on social media, and saying, yes, obviously you don't have to, or maybe providing some sort of professional help. What resources will the company devote to detecting and preventing the organization of targeted harassment campaigns directed at staff members? So I don't think we could really prevent them, because if you say something on the internet, it's there forever. Even if you delete it like 27 seconds later, it's the internet. We all know that. Once you post it, it's there forever. To detecting, I think the company should have sort of a branch, probably somewhere in human resources, where people can come in and say, I feel like I'm being attacked by the internet, could you please help me? And people in a similar position to mine, like community managers, should maybe try to monitor the developer's account a little bit to see whether they're actually being harassed or whether they need to step in. What training will the company provide to staff so that the staff understands the expectations for engagement and what to do if they are targeted? Honestly, here I do not know. I think the best thing we can pretty much do as companies is just to come to our developers and our employees in general and tell them, don't feed the trolls. Because there really isn't much else we can teach them. What else can we teach them? Like, don't post stupid shit on the internet? Technically, that's don't feed the trolls. But that's really all I feel companies can really do. What is the quote-unquote 9/11 process, you know, like emergency process for an employee who is being brigaded, harassed, threatened? What happens when it's outside of company hours? So, I don't know, honestly. Especially for the second part. What happens when it's outside of company hours? I think we do have a slight benefit these days that we are mostly international companies, so the companies do not really have hours unless you're directly going to a studio and developing something there, but often people are working from a home office in our industry. But what is the emergency process? I honestly don't know, and I will not pretend that I do. Who can employees contact to vet their social media posts, both those made in company-controlled space and those made from their personal media accounts? Probably people in positions such as mine. The community managers, the community moderators, and just people who are generally in charge of dealing with the community. And this one's fairly easy, yeah. Okay. Next up, we're coming to something that is stranger to me, because I honestly don't believe anybody should be doing this. So mostly my answers will be no one here. What are the calibration discipline monitoring procedures? Who monitors employees' personal social media and how much monitoring is to be expected? No one, pretty much. I will probably be like following the developers who are working on Chibera, but I will not really be saying what they can and cannot post. I will be just looking whether they are being harassed, and if they say something stupid, I might come to them and say, you know what, that was probably stupid of you to say. So I would say how much. Probably like a check-in once or twice a day, because for a small studio, for a larger studio, who knows? Depends on how much staff can be put onto this task and how big of a company is. So that also influences how many people are generally going to be interested in this. Are managers responsible for monitoring their direct reports' personal, private social media? No. They aren't, unless they are community managers, because that is their job, to monitor the community. But other managers, no. What is the review process if somebody has concerns about an employee's post and who is involved? In our case, it would be me, the community manager. And again, it's probably going to be somebody from the community managing department. Depends on the size of the company. It could be somebody like low level. If it's a smaller company, it could be directly someone in charge of managing the community. What is the disciplinary process, if necessary, and who is involved? Here, I think there should generally be something like a first notice, like, you know what, we noticed that you're doing something dumb. You should probably stop. This could potentially hurt our company. Second, there should again be a reprimand, in my opinion, saying like, we warned you once, we're warning you for a second time. Next time there will be serious repercussions. And thirdly, there will most likely be employee termination. That's my own view. And who is involved? The HR manager, at least in like larger companies where there is an HR department, the community manager, who is there to judge the level of damage either being done or potentially being done, and In case that there is not an HR manager, then probably the CEO of the company. And last of all, these ones are very easy. Are employees allowed to play the game if the game is multiplayer? Yes. Are they allowed to have non-company tag personal accounts? Yes. What feelings are employees allowed to express while playing on company accounts? What sort of language are and are they allowed to use? Exactly the same standard as the rest of the player base. They aren't allowed to be excessively toxic. And what exactly that means is don't harass or insult or threaten anyone else. What feelings are they allowed to express while playing on personal accounts? What sort of language are and aren't they allowed to use? And I think what is the difference between this? Oh, okay, one was on a company account. On a company account, so the first one, there they probably shouldn't express their emotions unless they're positive at all. Because they are there to represent the company. And they should be positive about the game. And they should not be negative towards their players at all. And when they're playing on their personal accounts, I answered that previously. They should uphold to the same standards as the rest of the community. So, in general, this was a really, really great blog by Jen McLean. Honestly, this is something I should have taught earlier about. It should have been probably one of the first things that even came to my mind when I took the position as a community manager. I sadly didn't. That means, obviously, I'm experienced in this position. And I will not claim that I am not. But I'm very glad that it appeared and that I could think about it. And I will certainly take many of the points that have been raised in this article into consideration when I will be creating the code of conduct for our employees. And companies who don't have any sort of social media code of conduct, I truly do believe that, yes, companies should make something like that. It's important, and it will likely help your company in the long term. Just avoiding social media backlash in general. So my answer is yes. Yes, social media should be somewhat regulated for people who represent companies. As you're not representing yourself, but you are representing yourself, your company, or the company you work for. And with that being said, that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving us a thumbs up here on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on Steemit, maybe you want to give us an upvote and follow the blog. Either way, be sure to leave a comment and be sure to tune in tomorrow for more gaming news, as we are your source of daily gaming news every single day. See you guys later with more gaming content.